definitely just, trying to bring our communities together and talk about, what's working here in Mount Lake Terrace might work great in Federal Way. It might work great where you're at. And, one of the things that I've always said was, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so you have to fill those spaces, no matter how frustrating they are. I know I got to spend a little bit of time with you during the state convention, and I happened to have been on the platform committee, so for the Washington State Dems, and was able to get you in there, and you had a hard time getting seated. And it's just like, we got to be looking out for each other, because it's so frustrating when the system is just kind of rigged against ordinary people participating, and make sure we're there.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I appreciate that. People like you, groups like the Progressive Caucus, like, you guys played an instrumental role. And I think that in the moment, it wasn't that, like, it was about suppression. I feel like in that moment, it was like, we just have to, there's all these other people waiting, right? But that's what I meant about being transactional versus relational. If my volunteer time is really that important, then that matters, and that needs to get fixed and addressed. And it shouldn't take my friendship and relationships with all these people to advocate for me. If the organizers feel that's important, then they should make that clear. And I felt that when my privileges were granted, right? And so I was really grateful that they took the opportunity to say, hey, wait, maybe we need to change this and address this right now versus waiting another 4 years.
Yeah, we don't have 4 years to wait. Is my feelings on the subject. We're just in this precipice of a moment where people are activated, they're stuck at home, they're laid off or waiting for work, or stuck in some pipeline of somewhere in between filing for unemployment and Zoom calls and trying to teach their kids or keep their kids busy. I know as a mother, that's one of the huge things that I struggle with all the time, having a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, is, how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them looking forward to something? I've known a ton of young people who've committed suicide in the last few months through this situation. And I just, it's like their hearts are just breaking. They don't have the ability to understand the magnitude of the system, let alone be empowered to change what they're doing and feel like they're impacting their community. And so I'm really just trying to, be a voice, be a place, be, save space, make space, be an ally, be an activist like I've always been. But it feels like we've got to do better. We've got to keep pushing that envelope, and things like defunding the police, things like reimagining and reevaluating our societal goals would do so much good for our community right now. It's just mind-blowing. Like, the task at hand is just it's monumental. And
this is important work. It is so important, and it's so critical right now, right? It feels like we might never see a moment like this again. And I'm really encouraged by the people that I've been working with and meeting throughout this time, right? Because that's what's going to drive us to where we want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, so I just wanted to bring up, I know, Oz, if you can look at some of the headlines I have. Let me see I think it's on the next slide, actually a couple down. There's a little what's in the news on slide 4. And, these are some of the things that are happening in our community right now. I know you're almost there. There it is. If you want to bring that full screen and pull up some of the links that we have in the rundown, we've got, private federal military kidnapping activists in the streets of Portland. And it's been so heavy. I know I've been downtown Seattle. I've been, in a lot, trying to be as active as possible and safe and meet all my obligations in this time. We also know that far right threats, we're a greater danger than Antifa. And seeing that happen, and being shared out internationally, but getting very little playtime at home. One of the big things that really hit me this week was that, when Breonna Taylor was effectively gunned down and murdered in her own home, that they didn't take the time to try and save her life. Like, she laid there. They just let her bleed out. And it's so just unconscionable to me that we're living in this dystopian future of this is our reality, and this is what we're having to deal with on a daily basis, is hearing these stories. There are tensions building and have been building for decades and hundreds of years in the United States, and we've just completely ignored them. And I know you talked a bit about some of the pieces that, really, really mattered to you, and some of the books we're reading here on the Brave New Future. We always talk a bit about, what we talk about, what we're reading, what's in the news, what's relevant to you. And I know you brought up Stephanie Kelton's book about the deficit. The deficit, I would say. I would call it the deficit disorder. She calls it the deficit myth. I would call it more of a disorder.
I agree. It's very, very interesting. Because I've always wondered, especially after COVID hit, right? So when all that money got released, I was like, hold, WTF. What just happened here? Because I've been told this is impossible, right? Like, we need to conserve our budget. We can't just make money. But apparently we can. When they want to.
When it suits them. And we have a lot of friends here in progressive circles and talk, I've been at actually several of Stephanie Kelton's book events that she's had online, which is, something I would have normally never been able to appreciate that in this time of COVID, that I've been able to probably attend more events than I normally would virtually. But, it's literally like everything we've based all of these decisions on for my entire adult life are mythical. They're not real and could be completely different. And, we look at our founding documents, they're old, musty, stale. We look at our thought processes on budget and monetary theory, and I'm finding much of the same. And how do we clean house with that? How do we, besides, what we've been saying on Uphill Media a lot is vote all incumbents out.
Right. That was the first thing I was going to say. Not even just because they're incumbents. I'll be honest. It's because right now, today, they do not understand what we're truly facing. They do not understand the concepts. And I just need you to have a seat.
Yeah. And it's like they just haven't really, kept up on it. They just... It's worked. It's back to fundraising. It's get us back to where we were, and this like fake comfort zone that, I personally just don't find ever coming back. So it's we've got this like moment in time to make great strides and change. And we need daring leaders that are willing to step up and do that. And we're not finding that.
I don't even think it's that they can't step up. I think when I was watching, the congressional hearings with Mark Zuckerberg. And that is when I understood what the problem with Congress was. They were asking him about how the internet works. If you don't understand, that's literally the next vehicle of how we disseminate information. And it's been around for too long. You guys have been in there since it was created. And so you did not take the time to prioritize things in a way that would help us. And so now it's your time to exit stage left. I need some folks that understand climate change and how critical it is right now today. I need folks that understand what the internet is, how the information is critical. That's literally an infrastructure. Why are people paying on an individual basis? COVID would not even be impacting us on this level if every household had internet. This should not be a bill, pay for service. This is how people literally get information. And it's not a crime to be poor.
No, but it feels like a crime, or you're completely at a disadvantage if you don't have broadband internet. And right. I'll have you know, I did make sure that was in the state platform. So you can hold every Democratic elected official in Washington state accountable for pushing for rural broadband internet as a public utility.
Yeah, we had on Thursday Thoughts on my show a couple months ago, we had Dr. Campbell and Chris Reichdell with OSPI, and he mentioned that's something they're interested in. And, you know, quite frankly, that needs to happen. Why haven't our kids been prioritized? So it just shows how our policies have led us to this point. And all COVID did was shine a highlighter on it. Because honestly, how many kids have been able to not research papers, or they have to sit at the library to get their homework done, and they should be able to be at home?
Yeah, and we saw that, you know, it was very interesting to see as our schools were shut down, as all of our school districts are trying to figure out what next year looks like, you know, how are we going to make these transitions and make things equitable when obviously, you know, I pay a pretty penny for my internet and I've upgraded it. I've had to upgrade it. At the same time, I know everybody can't do that. That's not an option for families struggling. And I've been, you know, I've been in that situation far too many times myself. And also, you know, how is it different from water? How is it different from clean food and
that part,
energy?
It's literally, we're at a point in our society where that is just as essential as food and water, especially since we're going to be dealing with the effects of COVID-19 forever. Like, I really need people to wrap their hands around this. I don't really care what you're hearing on TV. Let's think about the facts for ourselves. The way that this disease is currently going, in some level, whatever your comfort level is, you need to adjust your life to deal with this on a long-term basis. I'm not saying you have to do what any government official is telling you to do, but I'm saying that you need to wrap your head around this and figure out what's best for your family, whether it be something to do with how they're going to go to school. I don't think schools are reopening, and that's just the fact. When you're looking at 45, because I don't say that person's name, and this reopen the schools, let's be clear. Congress holds the purse strings. He cannot take our federal funding from our schools. So I'm not listening to that noise. So our kids can be safe. Our school districts can prioritize them. They are making plans because it's going to be based upon public health. That's who's going to make that decision, not that idiot in charge.
Yeah, and what is the, you know, Federal Way District looking at? I'm just curious because I've been trying to follow several of them around the state, you know, just to see the differences, you know, and I haven't really gotten a lot of detail.
Well, I'm sorry, Amber. Really sorry. Real quick, my laptop is dying. Hold on.
Oh, no worries. Gotta get your power. We do have a question though. I just saw it for a second. It was, how do we feel about municipal internet? And you know, I am a firm believer that municipal internet needs to be a public nonprofit and part of public utilities. And I want to say a bit about that because I've worked a lot in the construction industry. And what I've found is that in these public utilities, they have some really, really nice areas because they take whatever leftover money that they have from their fees and they do a spend down. So they go and have their bathrooms remodeled and they go and they have their facilities repainted and magically they're out of money at the end of the year. And that justifies them being able to raise the costs. And that's a little known trick that we don't often talk about is that spend down, that they're still in the capitalist mindset. And so we need to be very careful about that. We need to have more citizen, regular people oversight, not developers and, you know, people in the political. No, we just need to have, you know, Fred at the end of the block and you know, regular people just like, are you managing this budget correctly? And are you spending it efficiently? Because I think they could be saving us a lot more money than they truly
I feel like we should empower our PCO model.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a precinct committee officer, you are over like it's about 250 households, right? And so it's an unpaid position, you know, but you do have a little bit of political knowledge. But in that role, like there's no money in the campaign. It's really about your relationships with people. And so that requires you to be accountable. It's your bill, your neighborhood. It's bill that you see at the mailbox. So Bill's going to be like, hey, I seen that you said this. not some faraway person locked in an office that you never know how to contact. And I also think, I would argue, Amber, that more of our public services should be nonprofit. Why are our hospitals for profit? Any of them.
Well, and I have a really hard time with them turning into religious nonprofits, which is what we're seeing the market taking over. And you know, especially now with the rulings coming down out of the Supreme Court, that, you know, they get to decide what services are justifiable based on the religious doctrine that guides them.
And that especially affects you and your community, because how many of your community members know that almost 5 years ago, Swedish was purchased by Providence, which is a religious-based system.
Yep.
Did you know that when they first published them, or purchased them, they immediately started praying during meetings? And I'm not saying I'm against that, but what I am saying is I don't think the public truly understands what these partnerships are, and that they've never really been transparent publicly about that purchase.
They haven't, and I've seen it with Good Samaritan all through Oregon. I mean, the whole West Coast literally has gone from the private market, and the only reason they're able to do that is because they have the political and monetary power, because they're getting tax write-offs as a religious organization. They don't pay taxes.
And that's part of the reason why here in Washington we have one of the most regressive tax systems, because so much money and influence goes in from those organizations. And, you know, the interesting thing that I found is it's not even really the money in the contracts. That's why we've been bamboozled for so long. It's all the pass-through money. Oh,
yeah. And then they call it like charity care. You know, that's the other thing. And,
you know, people think that's an actual grant.
And it's not. It's not at all.
It's a write-off.
And it's in the millions. As somebody who is part of the working poor, with autoimmune conditions, I've had to apply several times. You know
what bothers me is that, and this is why I worked for a hospital for nearly 10 years. And before I'm medically retired at this point. And so when I was there, why I went there was that I believed in their mission statement. Patients are first. And towards the end, I was grateful to have an out, because they were no longer first. And, you know, like when you're talking about that application, you know that most hospitals, their staff is not allowed to offer charity care. Patients have to ask. So that means even if a patient is crying, begging, telling me that they're about to sell their house, I can't offer them a solution. And that is a crying shame.
It is. And they often, you know, they don't give, I've done medical billing for many years, and they don't give opportunities for you to be able to challenge their charges. I've had, it was an ER visit at Swedish, and I knew exactly what that CPT code was and what the definition was, and I challenged him on it. I was like, that doctor saw me for 3 minutes. He ordered a test, and he came back in and said goodbye to me. And he charged me for something that should have been a 45-minute visit, and sent me to collections over it. And I had no recourse. Nothing. There was literally nothing I could do about it. It was, except for call HSS and file a complaint. I mean, it's just such a maddening system that you aren't given.
Well, actually, that's not true. But what it was something that could have been done, but they refused to.
Yes, so I challenged them.
Leave the billing, and I went to the actual hospital because my numbers were bad because I helped too many people. I didn't take enough calls, and see that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to help every caller I can, no matter how long the call takes. They don't like the queues. I would work with some patients for months, and they don't like that. They just want you to answer the call, give them some information, and I'm not transactional. And I refuse to be made to be transactional. There is something wrong with that. It does not put people first, and arguably it harms our society.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Thank you for just keep pushing that home. You know, I mean, I don't think people, you know, and that's the thing. Like, we all get kind of siloed, and we get, you know, in our comfort zone, and we don't push that enough. We don't ask those questions. And we don't.
Even when you're looking at like these recent events, right? You know, tensions are high. Racism is at an all-time forefront. But you know what's really important? people have this weird ideal. How you fight racism is doing your part. I don't care if you are like a street sweeper. There is something you can do in your day to solve this problem. And if more people were concerned about how can I do my part in whatever that role is, we would be a better society. Instead of just being like so passive aggressive and like, oh, if I accept any of this, then I'm just an awful person. Wait, sit in it, let it go. Let's start focusing on solutions.
Absolutely. I just got a question out of our chat. It says, in what ways could we synergize our energy and money to be more effective in our areas and focus on creating sustainable models to continue the momentum that we build?
Okay. What I think is staying engaged. I know that we are like a society that is driven by like all the updates. We get all these news articles. It's epic alert, new alert, new alert, new alert. Figure out what you're passionate about. Don't make it about everything for everybody. Even everything is a good cause, but find your passion and then focus on how you can move that cause forward. And it's not all about finances and donating. What's most effective is actually your time.
I love that. And how is the Federal Way Black Collective utilizing people's volunteer efforts in time of COVID?
Oh man. So one really fun thing is that like every meeting is on Zoom. So we have been asking volunteers to go to their respective city meetings, their city council meetings, their city subcommittee meetings, and doing like a write-up. And then we post it on our website or our Facebook. And that way, that information can be shared. So that way you're kind of getting involved, you're understanding the process, and you're getting excited and finding your way. So that's because we don't want to tell people exactly what to do, right? Because we're not the keeper of this work. We're driven by community requests. So even the work we're doing now, we were fortunate to have 2 years of community meetings to lead us until we can meet again. And we were able to secure funding for that based on those. So once you figure out what your individual passion is, you can connect with a lot of orgs. And even if you're not in Federal Way, I have a lot of org lists. I'm sure Amber does too. Like, connect with people in the community that are well connected, because most of us are willing to do a virtual coffee, and figure out where your place is.
Agreed. And also so excited to find out that we have mutual friends in Southwest Washington. And we're hoping Miss Marianna can join us later on tonight. We will see. I know she is busy. She works in mental health. And so I know she's still getting off of her shift. So we'll see if she makes it. But, and that's the thing, like, it's different in all different parts of Washington state. And I spend time in Eastern Washington and, I'm just north of Seattle now, but I've spent a lot of time, down in Tacoma and Olympia and out in more of the rural parts. And it feels different. There's different issues that seem to be popping up, but there's always like this underlying current. Mm-hmm. And so, how to get people, activated to a part where they feel safe and they feel, I think a lot of people, especially, myself having growing up in, rural, more conservative areas of Alaska, that like you're afraid to really speak your truth and find your people. And that's really hard. What advice do you have on that?
It's interesting because this is a conversation I have a lot with people. Washington is a strange place for that. We have what we call the Seattle freeze. So like all winter, we don't really talk to nobody. It's just a very weird place when you're talking about organizing and engaging. I used to do some marketing and it's just hit or miss. It's not like you can do a certain level of work and guarantee something out here. And other states are much easier. But what I would say is that's why it has to be passion driven, because if you're just thinking about connecting with just any cause or just trying to be on any train, that freeze is going to be really hard to fight. That it's a little passive aggressive. Like, we want to say that we're really a blue state, but like, if we're honest with ourselves, that's not true. And so it starts with self-honesty.
That's awesome. Yeah. Actually I have a clip. I'm not sure if you're ready, Oz. This was an event that happened out in Aberdeen, which is kind of literally like middle of the state on the coast, and it was pretty charged, and it was pretty upsetting. And like this was people trying to have a Black Lives Matter event, and this was the kind of opposition, I suppose, they ran into, and we found it's continued, and it's been just very racially charged, and borderline violent, and how do we stop these in our communities? But I'll let Oz play the clip a bit, and we'll see a little bit of what they were encountering while protesting.
I'm sorry. Patriots run fucking Aberdeen.
That's right. It's our town.
And that's the way it's always gonna be, you fucking idiot. Why? Go the fuck away. You're all dumb. You're all dumb as fuck. What are you even protesting?
Got something to say?
No. Some
It's okay,
shit
I'm
in
listening.
Minnesota? Do you even know what the fuck you're doing here? Do you really?
I'm not even from Minnesota.
Shut the fuck up. I know you ain't from Minnesota, retard.
Then what did they say I was?
What the fuck are you
We're not arguing, people.
Yeah, there's some shitty cops out there. What are you gonna take down the police force in Aberdeen? So all you fucking tweaker retards can run this show? No, not by my fucking watch, motherfuckers. It's game over for every one of you dumb fucks. And time's ticking. Clock's ticking. You're all fucking retard tweakers. I go to 7-Eleven every goddamn fucking morning for my coffee. I gotta wear a gun in that motherfucker.
Sarah, he's spitting.
Pour my
Please get away from
motherfucking
his
coffee.
spit, please.
Because you motherfuckers are out there making everybody in the world feel unsafe. You're a bunch of pieces of shit. Go the fuck away. Disappear. You don't belong here. You're not fucking constitutional patriots. Get the fuck out of this free republic. You don't belong here. You're a bunch of drug addict fucking retards. Bye.
Coming from the person has a beer in her back pocket.
People we're having to deal with, and they've just been harassed ever since. So it's pretty outrageous. One of them was arrested over a couple weekends ago for brandishing weapons on the schoolyard. Just clearly not stable people, fully armed, out in public. There's pictures of them with the police just standing right behind them, no masks, just not really, not addressing the issue, so to speak. Clearly in their small town eyes, these protesters brought it on themselves for protesting.
This is, it's interesting. He did this long tirade about how like unsafe he feels, but I'm like, it seems like a very calm person attempting to have a conversation with a very uncalm, angry mob who's also armed. And so I'm really tired of people that are armed saying how scared they are of untrained people who are just trying to have conversations.
Yeah, I mean, they just seem the whole thing has been unwilling to even examine any of their actions, let alone, what issues might be at hand. Like they're just
check
so...
your privilege. You just walk up to someone and you're yelling at them, telling them something that you've never even met that person, right? And you're just lumping them. You're all, what do you say, like drug addicts, like all these evil, derogatory things. How do you expect to initiate a conversation? Like, even if someone, I don't know, I'm like, I think this person has different ideals than me and I need to have a conversation. At what point do you think about the result you're soliciting? Because if that's how you approach someone, you're going for a fight. You're not going for a conversation.
Well, and the bigger thing too is, now that we are here, now that this conversation is being put in public, and then the police aren't doing their job that they're paid to do, of protecting the public, of protecting people who may have different feelings against them. So
I had a similar situation in Federal Way. When we first started what I call like providing security services for the teachers with the Federal Way Education Association so that they could feel safe. Like teachers are not organizers. They just wanted to be a support, right? So at the very first one we did, we meet with the police captain and we're like, hey, we want to do this safely. What is your policy around, escalation? As far as what triggers a response from you? How do I help keep my processors safe? And how do we let you know if there is like a bad actor, right? So they were like, call us. This is what triggers that. Everything should be cool. We're going to try to keep we are going to be set up and we're going to have them in the background. So there was an issue. Someone drove by and they were like, hey, there are snipers on top of this gun shop. And so I call him. I say, hey, Commander, this is going on. And his response is, that is legal. And let me explain to you why. Yes, it's legal, but that was the wrong response. It is your job to de-escalate. So if that shop owner felt unsafe because of protests as a result of anything else going on in the country, what is in your toolkit as a commander to help them feel safe so they are not pointing assault weapons at teachers and babies from 2 street blocks away? So what he should have did was say, my officer will sit here, and if there is an issue, we will let your employees know. Because we understand guarding your property is your goal. And I'm not arguing with them about that. But if we are 2 city blocks away, that type of response is only an escalation. Because you're seeking to intimidate us. And that's what we're talking about here. Yes, legally, that's their right. But that doesn't mean that you have to allow them to do it. It's that you can show them a better way. Perhaps they didn't understand because guess what? As the police officer commander, you've taken extensive training. So you're supposed to offer those tips, not just allow them to do whatever they want to do.
That I can't agree more. It's been so frustrating. We helped end some of the police contracts here in the Edmonds School District because they had armed officers going to all the high schools and middle schools, and it was just out of control. They, at the same time, they're asking for copy paper the first month of school because they didn't put that in their budget yet. They had a budget to have a police contract.
And your job is to educate students. If a police officer is needed, that is free. We already pay for it. I don't even understand why we're paying for additional SROs. If that is needed, that should come from the police budget. I am not currently a policy maker, so it is not currently my job to decide whether or not it is needed. But as a taxpayer, looking at the fiscal responsibilities, that's just not a fiscally solvent plan, and that's why it's not working. Because when you hire someone from an outside agency, you have no control over their behavior. You have no control over their policies and procedures and how they engage with our students. So if you allow police officers whose policies and procedures teach them how to deal with criminals to deal with our children without establishing a subset of policies and procedures, then you are treating our children as criminals. And you are funding with my money that I'm telling you to buy those books and that paper and those pens that you now ask me to buy, because you're doing something that's not even your role. And to be clear, the Supreme Court has said several times, because it's about response time, right? That's why they do these SRO contracts.
That's the excuse.
Shooting, no officer has any expectation of protecting our kids. That's literally been ruled by the Supreme Court. So why do we still do this?
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen it at all levels of government after 9/11, and not that it didn't exist before then, because I had, armed officers when I was in school, and, that main officer that was at our high school every day, 5 years ago, it came out that he had, inappropriate relationships and was, sentenced for sex trafficking. Like these people have never been good or there to protect us, and they've only preyed upon the most vulnerable. And I most definitely see our youth as vulnerable. Yeah. And why we need this in the education setting is just beyond me. It makes me so mad as a taxpayer, as a parent, as an early childhood educator. Like, this is just not the vision and the need that we have right now. Our children need help. They need our support. They need, we need access to childcare.
They need therapists. They need counselors.
They need healthy food.
What I find is they have like one family liaison for an entire school. So the family liaison or school counselor's role is to know the students so that you can develop and assess their needs and meet them. If you don't have the time or capacity to get to know the students versus just a name or a number, then you can't do your job. So we wonder why we're seeing an increase in disciplinary problems. The staff don't understand these kids. They don't know them. They don't have, here we go again. They are transactional. The kids are numbers versus relational. We have them for 12 years. We force them into the system. It's legally a requirement. The least we could do is actually support them.
That would be a lovely change, or, make sure they have, the basic essentials at school and at home, and not, be spending our money on police officer contracts. It's so
and
insane.
I'd like to see a copy of that if you could, whatever language you have, because I'm taking that to my district.
Yes. We fought hard for it, and I was grateful that my daughter was, even with lots of anxiety, was willing to stand up and say how the students distrust this process. So I hope we can, carry that pattern forward. I know Seattle School District was able to do it, and we just need to keep pushing these levels. But I don't think regular people realize this is happening.
Right.
Either you're part of a different voting block, or you don't have kids in school anymore, so you're like, oh, that wasn't a thing when I had kids, so why would it be now?
Mm-hmm.
But it really is different. I know my childcare bill was more than my mortgage, and things for working families are not okay.
Right. Like, I'm actually a board member with the Children's Campaign Fund. And when I joined, I was like, what is your goal for childcare? And one of our goals is that childcare should not be a business model. It doesn't work. I think that even now, look at COVID, all these daycare centers have closed. And as we're talking about reopening our schools, right? How is that even possible if whether or not it's a hybrid model, another model, we're not even giving room for our parents to plan. Like, this is just.
Or single mothers, that's a huge concern for me. As a single mom of a child going into high school and still in elementary school,
so you're going to need 3 laptops for your household, because you got to work, and both of them have to be able to go to school. Who's paying for all that?
Yeah, and somebody to sit there and babysit them, that they're making all their meetings on time. Because if I'm working, I can't do it. Cook lunch, breakfast, dinner, clean the house. Now everybody's home. It's really challenging.
Mental health is one of my biggest concerns, and the sad part is our state was already in such a awful position regarding our mental health services that our children, I'm not even sure where to start.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And that's the thing. I'm worried. I'm seeing this, uptick in mental health crises in the, 20 somethings and the younger 30s. And we haven't seen enough of it in our young kids. And I think they're, especially it's summer, they can be a little bit distracted, but it could really change, greatly in the next few weeks and months as we develop, or especially as housing stresses start hitting more families. I'm very concerned that our federal government obviously has done nothing to actually help the people.
Right. They haven't. And if you look in other countries, it is embarrassing that we are supposedly the richest country in the world, right? Yet we have the most inefficient and least equitable and just overall worst stimulus package. The CARES Act was a failure, in my personal opinion. I don't understand why they worried so much about these small business grants and all this stuff. Families could have done whatever they needed with that money if you would have just gave it to families. We don't need you to tell us how to apply and get in all of our, just help families, period. We're trying to figure it out. Even just now, the CARES Act funding that's going to go help the one owner businesses, the city of Federal Way just started that grant application process. People have been home from work since March.
Yeah, that's way too late. Way too late. I saw one of my little town in Skagway, Alaska, decided to take their CARES Act money, and they did. They turned it right around and gave each resident $1,000 because without a cruise ship industry coming into town and basically the economy of the year, which is 3 months of summer, was completely gone. So they did that to keep people in town and to keep businesses moving. It kept people paying their rent. It kept people paying their mortgages. And so then it's
a rent moratorium.
No,
we just
they didn't.
need them to give us our money.
Exactly. It's scary. I see Marianna has joined us, but I don't see her on video. If she's able to, I'd love to have her join our conversation. How you doing, Marianna?
I'm here. I'm just driving, so just show the video.
Okay, no worries.
On my way home from work.
Good. And we're really happy to have you join us. You are out on the, I guess, southwest coast, I would like to call it, of Washington.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
We played some of the video of what you guys experienced protesting and meeting with the 3% and beyond in your community. How has that changed things in a place like Aberdeen?
Nobody's protesting anything anymore. Nobody's willing to go out on the street and do shit because these guys are still harassing us, Especially my one friend is getting the worst, as far as I know. It's kind of tapered off from the other people. They're not mostly just focusing on Anthony. So he's not doing really well, mentally or he lives in a big house, has all his kids living there, his grandkid, and they're all moved out, and now he's alone.
No,
It's not safe there. It's not safe there.
That's awful. I wish we could.
Robbed him of his last year of having all of his kids at home.
Yeah, you're getting cut out. Let us know when you're home, and we'll bring you on video.
Growing up and all that.
I hope you were able.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We know you need broadband rural internet. We talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be able to hear you and see you perfectly.
Usually with my phone it's better, but this is a bad stretch of the road.
Yeah, no, that happens. I mean, we totally understand. We appreciate you joining us when you can, and let everybody know that you are a candidate in LD19. Ballots have dropped now. I am now a candidate as well in Snohomish County, position 4, which goes from Mill Creek to Mount Lake Terrace, parts of Bothell, unincorporated Snohomish County, and Briar. So, yeah, it's a busy week. Yeah.
How many times does someone have to ask you to run? I've heard that it takes 7 times for a woman to decide. Typically, a man is just one. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have not been keeping track. I can say that. I definitely felt the pressure. I was inspired by Bernie to run for PCO originally. I never saw myself as a politician. I was always an activist. I was somebody who was more interested in passing legislation and, being a citizen lobbyist and teaching. I actually, in Alaska, I worked with National Organization of Women to help childcare providers learn how to testify. One of the cool things in Alaska that I'm hoping we can bring here to Washington State was remote testimony. So I was taking that process and trying to teach people who had no idea how to advocate for themselves, how to engage, how to track know when to call in, know what to say and tell their personal story. I've I've since done that in Washington, D.C. I've done that internationally with the food movement. But I've been asked a long time to please run for something, and I ran for PCO a few times, and I've been leadership with my LD, but I really didn't see, I've had to work between 2.5 to 5 jobs. So running for office really wasn't in that economic picture until COVID. So I kind of took the opportunity and ran with it.
I appreciate you for doing it. Thank you. I mean, you may not be representing my district in particular, but the reality is we need candidates like you. And before I forget, don't think of yourself as a politician. Please stay in that vibrant energy grassroots space of fighting for your community. Because your ideas are amazing. Transparency is like so huge. It's going to unlock literally the world for the community that we're serving.
Well, and I also saw, it was one of those situations where I saw, you see female women, especially in leadership positions all around the world, making transformative change. And that's just innately in our nature, I believe. And we need to honor and push that forward. We have this little window at our late stage capitalism to be able to grasp ideas and make drastic change. And without that, I don't think we have much of a future. So it was kind of, everything I've done's been for my family, for my community, for the people around me, for generations to come. And I think there's an energy there that we have to honor and push forward. We've seen it in Iceland. We've seen it in New Zealand. Those countries are doing amazing, and we're failing at it miserably here in the US. Yes. So it's now's the time. We got to support people like Marianna, who's an amazing nurse running, and, everybody around our state that is, running under that progressive ticket, not to be bought out by the corporations and, the mainstream media. We have to choose a different narrative. Now's our time to do that. So anyway, we are at the top of the hour. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been following the show in chat. Please hit share. Check out, I will add more links to our rundown so that you can connect with the Federal Way Black Collective, and check out Lynn on Facebook. She's got an awesome Thursday night program. I've been watching the last few weeks. It's been great. And we have so much work to do. Like there, no matter where you are in this crisis, in this situation, like, know that you can impact change, and don't be a bystander. It's time to get up and stand up right now. So thank you, Oz, for everything behind the curtain, and I believe you'll be taking us out with some music soon.